I think 70%, probably at a minimum, 70% of the blame for the drama and the soap opera and the dysfunction that's gone on in Pittsburgh is from the instigator himself, Antonio Brown. I believe he is the domino that set a lot of this into motion. But that doesn't mean Mike Tomlin is blameless. I would give him something like 15 to 20% and Ben Roethlisberger the other portion of that share. And the reason that I would do it this way is both Roethlisberger and Tomlin are the purported leaders. Ryan, I've seen nothing to suggest the Rooney family has undercut Mike Tomlin. Every step of the way, it seems to suggest that Tomlin and Roethlisberger are on the same page. Tomlin understands that Roethlisberger is the necessary component to him winning. So I'm not going to put a divide that I don't see between those two men. I believe in leadership. Ultimately, I believe in what Harry Truman, our former president, said is the buck has to stop somewhere. And it doesn't mean it's always going to be fair. It doesn't mean it's always going to be right. But if you're in that position of leadership, it has to stop with you. And when I see players, Juju Smith-Schuster, Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, former players, Rashard Mendenhall, and just quick side note on this, I don't know what's going on with Rashard Mendenhall tweets. I really don't. I can't tell. Is he calling Ben Roethlisberger racist? Did he retract it? Was it a thought experiment? Was he trying to show us how powerful accusations were? I have no idea what Rashard Mendenhall is doing here. But the point is, when it's coming from so many different places, Domonique, players and former players, I have to start going, whoa, whoa, whoa. At some point, leadership has to take control. Leadership sets a tone for the locker room, and leadership resides primarily in the hands of Mike Tomlin.
Well, it seems like with your Truman quote that the leadership would support what Ryan's saying. Like in the Truman quote, the point of that was the leadership stops at the top, and Tomlin's certainly not at the top.
I believe, you can tell me if you think I'm wrong, Tomlin is empowered to be the leader of that locker room.
Right, and I
don't think the Rooneys have taken that power away.
I don't necessarily agree with Ryan, but I think his point is Tomlin doesn't have a choice but to side with Ben Roethlisberger because of the way that the Rooneys treat them. And I think Kevin Colbert's comments where he called the rest of the team kids definitely suggest that Ben Roethlisberger in that organization is on a higher level than any other players, which I personally think is unacceptable. I would go a further step to say that I don't apportion any blame. I like how specific you were with the percentages. I don't apportion any blame to Tomlin. I'll go the other direction, that I give Tomlin some credit, because we give Coach of the Year to mostly the coach who does the most with the least talent. I think he had a lot of volatile players in a tough situation in that locker room, and they have been competitive every year that they've been there. He's won Super Bowls. I think that the only people that are disgruntled are the people that are outside of the locker room. I don't know how we push this on Tomlin. He's been managing these tough situations.
It's when they get outside the locker room we start hearing about it.
His job is to manage.
We can't assume it wasn't there when they were in the locker room.
But his job is to manage what's happening in the locker room. The one thing that you could bring up is how Antonio Brown didn't play in the last game, but I think most people would argue that shows strength from Tomlin, saying, I don't care how good you are.
Real quick, if 0% of this blame falls on Mike Tomlin, who does it fall on?
Yeah, I don't think that you have to go with a percentage of blame. I think sometimes people don't fit together, and that's the way that it works. Relationships fall apart, and it's fine. The people who are angry are outside, and I think that the one issue I take with the tweet from Ramon Foster is he's suggesting that people should call him if he has a problem, or call Marquise Pouncey if he has a problem. The whole point of tweeting it is they want the world to know. They don't want it to be quiet. They're outside the locker room now. They want to expose what they think are the issues in that locker room now. They don't want to go and settle this quiet.
It also seems like people tend to, in the heat of the moment, hit send and they'll say whatever on social media, and then they might want to do that backpedaling, but at that point, it's out there for the world to see.
You're right, Charlie, but here's the reality, though. I talked to several former Steelers, and I got the same consensus, and even after we talked yesterday, it was put out Mendenhall's comments, and the problem is Ben walks around the facility like he's King Kong, and let me try to summarize this story up as best I can. Before our man Antonio Brown decided not to play in the last game, walked out of practice late, whatever it was, Ben Roethlisberger took it upon himself to go ahead and penalize Antonio Brown. They had a full practice in which Ben Roethlisberger literally refused to throw a single ball to Antonio Brown. So now Antonio Brown is heated and upset. This man is literally the best wide receiver in the NFL, and Mike Tomlin doesn't jump in to stop it. So Big Ben has made his choice. And this is just one of many occasions where he's going to discipline another athlete, another player. Now he's stepping in as coach. Now he's having that power.
Listen,
and Tomlin cannot jump in and override that. That's a problem.
I don't think Ben Roethlisberger is blameless. I want to be clear. I think yesterday we had this debate, and you want to pit this as Brown versus Roethlisberger. I think they're both to blame to varying degrees. Because Roethlisberger is a leader, because he has been empowered, just like I said, the buck has to go somewhere and stops with Tomlin, it has to go up to Roethlisberger. We all agree he has a disproportionate influence on that team.
Yeah.
And therefore, he has to take some blame. But let me just say this. So we all know that at various times in this business, at this company, for example, Twitter has been a problem for people that go on air. You say things, and you can get yourself in trouble. And I remember there was a moment where we had to have a meeting. We had to talk about what can be done, what kind of guidelines, how can we all help ourselves not do things that are hurtful to ourselves and hurtful to the company. And a word came up, okay, in this meeting. And a word came up. I mentioned it. I know that Scott Van Pelt mentioned it. The word is judgment. You have to have judgment, individual judgment about what to say. There's no rules. And to some point, this is where I sympathize with Tomlin, there's no way that a leader can stop and impose judgment, meaning Antonio Brown has horrendous judgment about saying things about his teammates, about showing up, about what he's doing in the locker room. And he has to take the primary blame because his judgment has failed. There will be something that goes on to Tomlin because leaders have to accept blame. But judgment, I think, is the problem.
At some point in time, this wasn't just one act and Antonio Brown lost his mind. This was years and years of this man not being treated as equal. This was years and years of Ben Roethlisberger not taking him under his wing. You would assume that a wide receiver, your best wide receiver, if I'm a quarterback, I'm taking you out to dinner. I know your family. We're speaking. Just simple teammate relationships,
to me, like, some things are worth tweeting. And I believe that for the people at this company, and I believe that for anyone, if some things are worth saying that you need to say. So I don't necessarily say that that's a problem because AB got what he wanted out of that situation. That's what happened. But I can't accept that you saying Tomlin deserves blame just because he's in charge. You've yet to say one thing that he's done wrong. You can go down a list of things that Ben Roethlisberger has done wrong. You go down a list of things that AB has done wrong, and you can go down a list of a bunch of players, but you haven't said one thing. You just say, he's in charge, blame him. No, it's not always the case.
There's a lot of things leaders can do.
We can use the Twitter example again.
There's a lot of things leaders can do.